Listen to me. You've been losing sleep, pacing the floor, replaying that situation over and over in your mind, wondering how, when, where it's going to work out. But I came here to tell you today, stop stressing. God has already gone ahead of you. What you're worrying about, He's already worked out. What you're crying over, He's already conquered. What you think is breaking you is actually building you. So lift your head up. Breathe again, because even when you can't see the way, God has already made one. Sometimes we forget that the same God who opened the Red Sea for Moses, who brought water out of a rock for Israel, and who fed Elijah in the wilderness, is still the same God working behind the scenes in your life. You see, the reason you're under so much pressure is not because you're forgotten. It's because you're being prepared. God doesn't show you the details because He's teaching you to trust His direction. We live in a world where everyone wants instant answers, instant clarity, instant success. But faith doesn't work like that. Faith says, even if I can't trace Him, I'll still trust Him. So today, I want to talk to somebody who's been holding on by a thread, somebody who's been praying, crying, and waiting. This message is for you. Don't stress. God has already made a way. God's plan is already in motion. You may not see it, you may not feel it, and nothing around you may look like it, but God's plan for your life has already been written, and it's already working while you're waiting. Many of us are living in a place where it seems like nothing is moving, nothing is changing, and every door we knock on remains closed. We think we've been forgotten, overlooked, or abandoned. But let me tell you something today. God never stops working. While you are pacing the floor in confusion, heaven is already arranging your breakthrough. While you are crying over what you lost, God is already preparing what you're about to gain. He has already gone ahead of you, preparing the path before you even take the first step. You might think you're waiting on God, but sometimes God is simply waiting on you to trust that His plan is already moving, even when you can't see it. The delay doesn't mean denial. The silence doesn't mean absence. Just because you don't see anything shifting in your favor doesn't mean God isn't setting things in order. When Joseph was thrown into a pit by his brothers, sold into slavery and locked in prison, it didn't look like a plan was working. But the whole time, the plan was moving forward. God was taking him from the pit to the palace, but Joseph couldn't see the palace while he was in the pit. All he could do was trust that something greater was happening beyond what his eyes could see. And that's exactly what you have to do. You've got to trust that the steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, and even when the steps seem slow or painful, the order still stands. God's plan doesn't need your panic. It doesn't need your stress. It just needs your trust. You see, when you start stressing, you start trying to take control of things that are already under divine management. You start trying to fix what God has already finished. Sometimes we pray for direction, but then we complain when the road gets rough. God doesn't always show you the smooth path because the rough one builds your strength. He doesn't always show you the shortcut because He's teaching you endurance. His plan includes the pain, the waiting, the lessons, and the growth. Everything you've been through is part of what He's using to get you where you're meant to be. There are moments when you'll think the enemy has won, when you'll think your time has passed, and when you'll wonder if God still hears you. But that's when you've got to remind yourself, His plan is already in motion. When Pharaoh's army was chasing the Israelites and the Red Sea was in front of them, God's plan was already ahead of them. He didn't show Moses the sea part until He stretched out His hand. Sometimes God waits for your faith before He reveals His move. He wants to see if you'll still walk when the way isn't clear, if you'll still believe when the promise feels far away, if you'll still praise Him in the middle of the process. God's plan has timing, and His timing is never off. You might be early or late. God is always right on time. You might be praying for something right now, wondering why it hasn't happened yet, and God is saying, because the scene isn't ready. When a movie is being filmed, the director sets the stage, adjusts the lights, positions the actors, rehearses the lines before the main act begins. The same is true with God's plan. While you're sitting in what feels like delay, He's setting the stage for your destiny. He's preparing the right people, the right opportunities, and the right moments. You don't see it because it's still behind the curtain, but when the curtain rises, everything will make sense. We often think God's plan should make sense to us, but if it did, it wouldn't require faith. Faith is believing that even in the confusion, even in the pain, even in the uncertainty, the plan still works. It's believing that the job you lost wasn't punishment. It was redirection. It's believing that the relationship that ended wasn't rejection. It was protection. It's believing that the door that closed wasn't failure. It was God making room for something better. Every disappointment is divine transportation moving you closer to where you're supposed to be. When you look back over your life, you'll realize that everything you thought was breaking you was actually building you. Every delay was a setup. Every hardship had a lesson. Every loss had a reason. The plan was never broken. It was just beyond your understanding. You can't measure God's movement by what you see in the moment because He often works in silence. He works in places you can't see, in people you don't know, and in ways you couldn't imagine. The reason He doesn't show you the whole picture is because if you saw it too soon, you'd try to skip the process. And skipping the process means you'd miss the preparation. So today, stop worrying about how it's going to happen. Stop replaying what went wrong. Stop trying to figure out what only God can finish. The plan is already in motion. Heaven is already moving. Angels are already aligning things on your behalf. You might not see it, but it's happening. Every closed door, every delayed answer, every lonely night, it's all part of the journey. God doesn't just work at the end, He's working in the middle. The same God who started the plan will complete it. What He began in you, He will bring to fulfillment. You just have to trust that even now, while you're standing in uncertainty, He's already gone ahead of you to make the crooked places straight and the rough paths smooth. So don't stress, don't doubt, and don't give up. The plan is already in motion. You're not waiting on God. You're walking into what He's already prepared. Stress doesn't solve anything. It only steals what peace could have restored. It robs your sleep. It clouds your mind. It weakens your faith. And it keeps you focused on the problem instead of the promise. You see, stress is like a thief that sneaks into your spirit and drains your energy little by little until you have nothing left but worry. You start your day tired. You end your night restless, and your mind never stops racing. But here's the truth, all that worrying doesn't change a thing. You can worry about the outcome, but it won't make the outcome arrive any sooner. You can stress over how God will work it out. It won't change the fact that He's already working it out. Stress doesn't bring clarity. It brings confusion. It clouds your ability to hear God's voice. When your heart is heavy with fear, your ears can't pick up faith. You pray. Your prayers feel hollow because stress is louder than your belief. That's why the enemy loves to keep you anxious, because a stressed mind can't think clearly and a worried heart can't trust fully. He knows if he can keep you restless, he can keep you powerless. But peace, real, divine peace, silences the noise of fear and reminds you that no storm can stop the plan God has for you. When you worry, you are telling God with your actions, I don't believe you've got this. You may not say it out loud. Every time you lose sleep over a situation you've already prayed about, you're telling heaven, I don't trust you to handle this without me. But God never asked you to carry the weight. He asked you to cast it. He never told you to fix the problem. He told you to trust the process. When you hold on to stress, you're holding on to what He asked you to release. The more you try to control things, the more anxious you become because you're fighting battles that were never yours to fight. Stress is the opposite of surrender. You can't say you've given something to God and still worry about how it's going to turn out. True faith is not found in your shout on Sunday. It's seen in your calm on Monday. It's in how you handle what you can't control. It's in how you keep your peace when life gets loud. It's in how you stand still when everything in you wants to run. God didn't promise that you wouldn't face storms. He promised to give you peace in the middle of them. That means even when the waves are crashing and the wind is howling, you can stand still and say, I don't have to understand it. I just have to trust it. When stress tries to take over, you've got to talk back to it. You've got to remind your mind who's really in charge. Say to yourself, God has never failed me yet. He's not about to start now. You've got to pull your focus away from the problem and fix your eyes on the promise. Stress magnifies what's wrong. Faith magnifies what's possible. If you focus on what's falling apart, you'll miss what's coming together. The moment you choose peace over panic, heaven starts moving in your favor because God moves through faith, not fear. Remember, the children of Israel could have entered the promised land sooner. Their fear and anxiety kept them wandering in circles for 40 years. They stressed about giants they had never even fought yet. They doubted the one who had already delivered them. And that's what stress does. It traps you in a cycle of doubt. It keeps you revisiting old fears instead of walking into new blessings. You can't receive what's ahead while you're still replaying what went wrong behind you. Sometimes God will let a storm rise up around you just to teach you how to find calm within it. When Jesus was in the boat with his disciples and the storm began to rage, they panicked. They were shouting, they were afraid, they thought it was over. But Jesus was sleeping, not because he didn't care, but because he knew who controlled the storm. He was teaching them that peace is not the absence of trouble, it's the presence of trust. If he's in the boat with you, you won't sink. The water may rise, but you'll still make it to the other side. So many people are living their lives holding on to stress like it's a lifeline, when in reality, it's the very thing drowning them. You were not created to carry constant worry. You were created to walk in constant faith. Every time you let go of stress, you make room for God's strength to take over. Every time you say, I can't, but he can, you're releasing heaven's power into your situation. The reason stress wears you out is because it keeps you doing what only God can do. When you try to play his role, you end up exhausted. But when you rest in his plan, you find peace that doesn't make sense. Peace that guards your heart even when life doesn't. Never told you to figure it all out. He told you to trust him through it. So stop trying to manage what only the master can handle. Stop trying to control what's out of your reach. If it's bigger than you, that means it belongs to God. Every time stress rises, remind yourself that you are not alone in this battle. Heaven is fighting for you. Angels are surrounding you. Grace is covering you. You don't have to carry that weight any longer. So take a deep breath. Let the worry go. Rest your mind. Trust your maker. The same God who provided for you yesterday will provide for you again today. The same God who opened doors before will open them again. He hasn't changed, and neither has his promise. Stress won't make it happen faster, but faith will help you endure until it does. Every minute you spend stressing is a minute you could spend trusting. Choose peace over panic, prayer over pressure, and faith over fear, because stress doesn't solve anything. It only steals what peace could restore. And the moment you stop stressing, you start seeing what God has been doing all along. Faith is the bridge between where you are and where God has already prepared for you. It's the invisible connection between your current situation and your coming miracle. It's what holds you steady when everything around you feels uncertain. Faith is not built in comfort. It's born in the tension between what you see and what you believe. It doesn't always make sense. It doesn't always feel easy, but it is always worth it. Because when everything else fails, when logic stops working, when plans fall apart, when people let you down, faith still stands. You can't touch faith with your hands, but you can feel it working in your heart. It's the quiet strength that tells you, keep going, even when the road is rough. It's the inner voice that whispers, God is still in control when everything else is out of control. Faith doesn't deny reality. It just believes in a greater one. It says, yes, I see the problem, but I also see the promise. Faith is not pretending everything's fine. It's believing that even when it's not fine, it's still going to work out for your good. When God gives you a promise, he rarely shows you the whole path. He doesn't hand you a map, he gives you a word. He doesn't show you the ending, he tells you to trust him in the middle. That's what makes faith so hard. It requires moving without full information. Abraham was told to leave his homeland. God didn't tell him where he was going. He just said, go. Abraham had to take the first step, not knowing what the second would look like. That's faith. Moving before you see the evidence, believing before you see the outcome. If you wait for everything to make sense, you'll never move. Faith doesn't remove fear. It gives you the courage to walk through it. It doesn't mean you won't have questions. It means you won't let those questions control you. You might be standing in a place of uncertainty right now, facing situations that make no sense. You've prayed, you've waited. It feels like nothing is changing. But faith says, even when nothing looks different, something is happening. Because behind every season of waiting, God is working. Faith doesn't rush the process. It trusts it. It says, God, even if you don't move the mountain today, I believe you're giving me the strength to climb it. You see, faith doesn't grow when life is easy. It grows when life tests you. It grows when you have no other choice but to believe. When you've done all you can and all you have left is hope, that's where faith starts to shine. The woman with the issue of blood didn't have a plan. She had faith. She didn't have influence or resources. She had belief. She said, if I can just touch the hem of his garment, I'll be made whole. And that moment of faith changed everything. That's what faith does. It reaches where logic stops. It pushes through the crowd of doubt, fear, and failure, and it touches the heart of God. The enemy doesn't fear your strength. He fears your faith. Because faith keeps moving when fear says stop. Faith keeps believing when facts say no. The moment you choose faith, you become unstoppable, not because of who you are, but because of who you believe in. The devil can't defeat a believer who refuses to doubt. He can attack your mind, but he can't destroy your faith unless you hand it over. So protect it, feed it, speak life into it, because your faith is the bridge that carries you over the storm, through the valley, and into victory. Sometimes God will allow you to be in a place where faith is all you have, so that you finally realize faith is all you need. He'll strip away the things you used to depend on, the people, the money, the certainty, until you learn that it was never them holding you up. It was always him. When your faith is anchored in God, no wind can blow you down. You might bend, but you won't break. You might cry, but you won't quit, because faith doesn't just believe in what God can do. It believes in who God is. Faith is what connects you to the unseen realm where miracles are already prepared. What you're praying for has already been set in motion, but faith is what keeps you walking until you reach it. Every step you take in faith is a declaration that says, I trust you. Even when I don't understand you, it's saying, God, I may not see the road ahead. I know you're already there. That's why faith pleases God, because it's the language of trust. When you speak faith, heaven responds. Faith is not loud, it's consistent. It doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just whispers, I'll keep going. When everyone else gives up, faith says, not yet. When doors close, faith says, there's another one. When time runs out, faith says, God's timing is better. It's not about pretending everything is perfect. It's about knowing that God is perfect even when everything isn't. Faith reminds you that the same God who carried you before will carry you again. The same God who made a way last time will make a way this time too. So don't let your faith grow weak just because life got hard. Don't let disappointment make you doubt what God declared. Even if it takes longer than you expected, don't stop believing. God doesn't work on your schedule. He works on his. And when his timing and your faith meet, miracles happen. Every step of obedience you take builds the bridge a little further. You might not be on the other side yet, but every act of faith is getting you closer. Faith is not about knowing the outcome. It's about trusting the one who controls it. It's the bridge that carries you from despair to destiny, from worry to worship, from waiting to walking in his will. So hold on to your faith like it's your lifeline, because it is. When everything else fades, faith will keep you standing. When everyone else doubts, faith will keep you believing. And when you finally reach the other side, You'll look back and realize that it wasn't your strength that carried you. It was your faith that bridged the gap between your pain and God's promise. You're not stuck. You're stationed. There's a difference between being stuck and being stationed. When you're stuck, it means you've been forgotten, abandoned, left with no direction. But when you're stationed, it means you've been positioned with purpose. God hasn't left you where you are because he forgot about you. He left you there because he's preparing something in you. The place you're in right now might not look like promise, but it's part of the process. Every season has an assignment. Sometimes the assignment is to wait, to grow, to learn, and to trust. You may not be where you want to be, but you're exactly where you need to be for what God is doing next. Too often, we look at where we are and call it a delay when it's actually divine placement. We think, God, why am I still here? Why hasn't this changed? Why haven't I moved forward yet? But what feels like being stuck is really God holding you still long enough to strengthen you. Because before God takes you higher, he makes sure your foundation is solid. Before he opens the door, he tests your patience. Before he trusts you with more, he sees how you handle less. The waiting season is not wasted, it's working. You're not being punished, you're being prepared. Think about Joseph again. When he was thrown into prison after doing nothing wrong, it looked like he was stuck. Years went by, nothing moved, no doors opened. But in reality, he was stationed, positioned exactly where he needed to be so that when Pharaoh called, he was ready. If Joseph had been released too early, he would have missed the opportunity that was meant for him. Some of the things you're praying to escape are the very places God is using to shape your destiny. If you move too soon, you'll miss what he's building in you right now. Sometimes God stations you in obscurity before he reveals you in opportunity. He hides you to heal you. He isolates you to instruct you. Because there are lessons that can only be learned in stillness. You keep wondering why doors aren't opening yet, but God knows you're not ready to walk through them. You're asking for the stage. He's still teaching you strength. You're praying for the platform, but he's still preparing your heart. And if he gave it to you too soon, would crush you instead of grow you. So he keeps you stationed, not to break you, but to build you. It's hard when you see others moving forward while you're still standing still. You look around and think, why is everyone else getting ahead? Why does it feel like I'm falling behind? But what you don't see is that while they're moving, God is maturing you. You're not behind, you're being built. What they're running toward without foundation might crumble later, but what God is forming in you will last. You may feel overlooked now, but your time will come. God doesn't skip what he intends to strengthen. When you're stationed, you've got to learn to serve faithfully where you are. Don't despise the small assignments. Don't curse the quiet seasons. Every moment is molding something in you. David was anointed to be king, but still sent back to tend sheep. He could have complained. Instead, he stayed faithful. He worshiped in the field before he ever sat on a throne. And because he was faithful in private, God could trust him in public. That's what it means to be stationed, to stay faithful when no one is watching, to keep showing up even when it feels like nothing is happening. God doesn't waste your waiting. He's using every minute to align things in your favor. You might not see it, but heaven is busy. The connections you'll need are being prepared. The resources are being positioned. The opportunity is being written with your name on it. But if you quit now, never see it. Patience is not passive, it's powerful. Waiting doesn't mean nothing is happening. It means something is being arranged beyond your sight. There's a reason God told the Israelites to stand still at the Red Sea. Thought they were stuck between the sea and Pharaoh's army. But God said, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. They weren't stuck. They were stationed for a miracle. God had them right where he needed them to display his power. Sometimes he'll trap you between what looks like trouble and what looks like defeat just to show you that he can make a way out of no way. So if you feel surrounded, if you feel boxed in, don't panic. You're positioned. You've got to learn how to be still without being stagnant. Stillness means resting in God's timing. Stagnation means giving up in doubt. There's a difference between pausing with purpose and quitting in frustration. The enemy wants you to believe you're stuck, so you'll stop trusting, stop praying, stop believing. But as long as you're still breathing, God is still working. As long as your heart is beating, His plan is unfolding. Even when you can't see movement, there's momentum happening in the background. When you're stationed, God is developing your endurance. He's teaching you how to stand firm when life gets hard. He's training your heart to depend on Him alone. Because the next season requires a version of you that this season is building. You might be crying through it. You're growing through it. You might not like it, but you'll thank Him for it later. Every struggle, every delay, every moment of stillness is shaping the strength you'll need for your next assignment. So instead of asking, why am I still here? Start asking, God, what are you teaching me here? Because when your perspective changes, peace begins to rise. You start realizing you're not stuck in this place. You're stationed for purpose. God hasn't forgotten you. He's forming you. You're not behind. You're being positioned. The door isn't closed forever. It's closed until you're ready. When the time is right, He'll move you. Until then, stay faithful where you are. Keep your heart steady. Keep your focus clear. You're not stuck. You're stationed. That means your next move is already being prepared by the hand of God. Closed doors protect you. Every time a door closes in your life, doesn't mean you've been rejected. It means you've been redirected. God is not trying to hurt you. He's trying to help you. There are doors you prayed for that would have destroyed you if they had opened. There are opportunities you cried over that would have crushed your spirit if God had let you walk through them. You saw something that looked good. God saw something deeper. He saw the hidden danger, the unseen betrayal, the silent trap. So He closed the door, not because He was punishing you, because He was protecting you. We don't always see it in the moment. When a door slams shut, it hurts. You feel rejected, disappointed, confused. You wonder if maybe you didn't have enough faith or maybe you did something wrong. But sometimes faith isn't about walking through open doors. Sometimes it's about trusting God when He locks them. You have to understand that closed doors are just as much a part of His plan as open ones. Every no is wrapped in mercy. Every not yet carries wisdom. Every delay holds direction. The same God who opens doors in His favor also closes them in His love. Think about how many times you prayed for something that didn't happen, only to look back later and thank God it didn't. There are relationships you begged God to save that He ended, because that person couldn't go where you were going. There are jobs you thought were your dream that He didn't give you, because that place would have buried your potential. There are chances you thought you missed that were really traps in disguise. Closed doors are not the end of your journey. They are the protection points that keep your destiny safe. We live in a world where we measure God's goodness by how many doors open for us. Sometimes His greatest goodness is shown by the ones He shuts, because open doors bring opportunity, but closed doors build obedience. You learn more about God when He says no than when He says, wise, yes, increases your gratitude, but no, tests your trust. Can you still believe when you don't get what you want? Can you still worship when the answer doesn't go your way? Because that's where faith grows, in the middle of the closed door. When God closes a door, He's never closing the promise. He's just closing a path. Plan still stands, but the route changes. You thought it would happen one way, but God says, no, at a better way. Sometimes the door you wanted was too small for what He's trying to do in your life. You were asking for something temporary, but He's preparing something eternal. You were reaching for something comfortable, but He's calling you to something greater. The door had to close because the season has ended. If you try to force it open, you'll end up trapped in what was instead of walking into what is coming. It's human nature to fight against closed doors. We knock harder, we try again, we push, we force, and we cry. But if God has sealed it, no amount of effort will open it. And that's not failure, that's favor. Because if He closed it, challenge, it's because what's behind it can't carry your future. You've got to learn to thank him for the doors that wouldn't open, just like you thank him for the ones that did. You may not understand it now, but one day you'll look back and realize that rejection was really redirection and disappointment was divine protection. Closed doors also test your perspective. They reveal whether you trust God for what he does or who he is. Many people walk away from faith when life doesn't go their way. But the mature believer says, even when I don't understand it, I'll still trust you, because if he's big enough to open doors, he's big enough to close them. And if he's wise enough to begin a blessing, he's wise enough to block what doesn't belong. You can't just celebrate the opportunities. You have to celebrate the obstacles that saved you. There's a story in scripture where Paul wanted to preach in Asia, but the Spirit of God prevented him. The door was closed. Paul didn't understand it at the time, but that closed door was what positioned him to take the message of salvation into Europe, changing history forever. Closed door redirected an entire destiny. That's how God works. He doesn't shut things down to stop you. He shuts things down to steer you. What you think is the end is really an intersection. What you think is a setback is actually a setup for something greater. You've got to learn how to release what God has already refused. Don't waste your strength on doors he's already locked. Don't cry over opportunities that were never meant for you. If you have to beg your way through the door, it's not your door. If you have to compromise your peace to stay there, it's not your place. If you have to lose yourself to keep it, it's not your blessing. God doesn't need you to chase what he's already chosen for you. When it's your time, the right door will open effortlessly. The handle will turn, the way will clear, and you'll realize why all the others had to close. Closed doors teach you how to trust the unseen hand of God. They remind you that he sees the whole picture while you only see a piece. You see the now, but he sees the next. You see the hurt, but he sees the healing. You see the rejection, but he sees the redirection. Every door that closes moves you one step closer to the one that will open and never shut. So instead of crying over what didn't work out, start rejoicing that you were protected. Start praising God for saving you from something you didn't even know was coming. Start thanking him for the people who walked away, because their absence made room for your anointing to grow. Stop trying to open what God has closed and start walking toward what he's preparing. Because when he finally opens the next door, you'll walk through it with a greater strength, a clearer mind, and a deeper faith. Closed doors protect you. They may frustrate you now. They're saving you for what's ahead. The hand that closes one door is the same hand that will open the right one in its time. And when it opens, you'll understand why every no, every silence, and every shut door was necessary. God wasn't denying you. He was defending you. You were never being rejected. You were being redirected toward something greater than you ever imagined. Delay is not denial. Just because something hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it won't happen. Sometimes the waiting season is the working season, not where God is ignoring you, but where he's preparing you. We live in a world that glorifies speed. We want everything instantly, success, overnight answers without effort, blessings without patience. But the truth is, God's timing is never rushed, and his delays are never wasted. Every moment you wait is shaping you, strengthening you, teaching you something you'll need when the blessing finally arrives. When God delays, it's not because he has forgotten you. It's because he loves you enough to prepare you. He knows what you can handle, and he knows when you'll be ready. There are blessings that, if they came too soon, would crush you instead of complete you. You might be praying for something that requires a stronger version of you to carry it. So instead of giving it now, God says, not as punishment, but as protection. He's growing your faith, deepening your roots, building your endurance. Because what's coming is greater than what you expected. It's easy to trust God when doors are flying open and prayers are being answered. But true faith is proven when heaven is silent. It's in the seasons of delay that your heart is revealed. Do you trust God's hand even when you can't see his plan? Do you still believe when there's no sign of change? Waiting reveals what kind of faith you really have. It's one thing to sing about patience. It's another to live it out when everything inside you wants to move faster. When God delays, he's not saying no. He's saying not yet. He's synchronizing everything, lining up people, timing opportunities and circumstances so that when the moment finally comes, everything will fit perfectly. You're not waiting on God. Sometimes he's waiting on you to grow into the person who can handle what you've asked for. Many times you're praying for a bigger platform, a better relationship, a stronger purpose, but God knows that your character must catch up to your calling. That it takes time, and time is never wasted in his hands. Think about the seasons of life. A farmer doesn't plant a seed today and harvest tomorrow. There's a process between sowing and reaping, watering, tending, waiting, and trusting. The seed looks buried, but it's not buried to die. It's buried to grow. And that's how God works with us. Enough and care enough. When it feels like you've been forgotten, you're really being developed. When it seems like your prayers have disappeared into silence, the answer is germinating beneath the surface. The roots are forming before the fruit ever appears. So don't curse your waiting season. It's where your foundation is being built. The delay is often the proof that God's hand is on your life. The enemy loves to rush you, but God loves to prepare you. The devil says, do it now, but God says, wait, I'm making it better. What you think is a delay is actually divine alignment. If you rush into something too soon, you might step outside of God's protection. But when you wait on him, you step into blessings that no man can take from you. His timing is perfect, not your clock, not your calendar, not your deadline, his. And when he moves, he does it suddenly. One moment of God's favor can make up for years of delay. When you're in the middle of the waiting season, it's easy to feel forgotten. You see others being blessed, others moving ahead, others receiving what you've been praying for, and you start to wonder, what about me? But remember this, delay doesn't mean you're behind. It means God is customizing your journey. What works for someone else might destroy you. He's not trying to make you wait longer than others. He's trying to make your story stronger than others. You're not on their timeline, you're on God's timeline, and he knows exactly when your moment will come. Waiting also builds humility. It teaches you that you can't control everything. You can work hard, plan carefully, and pray fervently, but at the end of the day, the outcome belongs to God. That realization humbles you and frees you from anxiety. When you trust his timing, you stop comparing and start resting. You begin to see the delay not as a roadblock, but as a runway. He's not holding you back. He's giving you space to take off. Many great people in Scripture faced long delays before their promise came to pass. Joseph waited over a decade from his dream to his destiny. David was anointed king as a teenager, but didn't sit on the throne for years. Even Abraham waited 25 years for his promised child. Every one of them experienced delay, not because they were forgotten, but because their preparation required time. God doesn't skip the process because the process makes the promise valuable. When the blessing finally comes, you'll appreciate it because you endured the waiting. Sometimes looks like a delay is actually a test. God is asking, will you trust me even when it takes longer than you thought? Because anyone can have faith when it's fast. But when it's slow, when it's silent, when you're tired of believing, that's when real faith begins. That's when you choose to say, God, I don't see it yet, but I know you're working. I don't feel it yet, but I know you're faithful. That kind of faith moves heaven. And when the waiting season finally ends, you'll see why it had to last as long as it did. You'll understand why doors stayed shut, why people walked away, and why things took time. You'll realize that if it had happened earlier, you wouldn't have been ready. But now, after the delay, you'll be wiser, stronger, and more grateful. You'll know that the delay didn't break you, it built you. So don't despise the wait. Don't think the silence means you've been forgotten. God's delays are deliberate. He's arranging the details, maturing your spirit, and preparing your blessing. Every moment you wait is a brick in the foundation of your future. And when he finally brings it to pass, you'll say, that was worth every minute. Because the blessing that comes after delay always carries double joy, double peace, double fulfillment. Delay is not denial. It's a sign that God is still writing your story carefully, beautifully, and purposefully. What feels like waiting is really weaving. Every thread of time connecting perfectly to his promise. Hold on, keep believing, and trust his timing. Because when it finally happens, it will be better, bigger, and more beautiful than anything you could have imagined. Miracles are not born in comfort. They are born in movement. God does not move while you stand still in fear, complaining, or waiting for perfect conditions. He moves when you move. Every miracle in the story of humanity was triggered by action, not because the action had power in itself, but because movement is the language of faith. When you move in faith, even with trembling hands and uncertain steps, heaven begins to respond. The power of God is not attracted to passivity. It's drawn to motion. When you step out, he steps in. Many people pray for change, but stay stuck in the same place. They want doors to open. They never walk toward them. They want to see the sea part, but they never take the first step into the water. Yet every great move of God requires someone to move first. When Moses lifted his rod, the Red Sea parted. When the widow poured her oil, her jars overflowed. When the lepers walked toward the priest, their skin was healed. The miracle didn't start when they prayed, it started when they moved. God honors action that flows from faith. Faith without works is dead, not because works earn favor, but because works express trust. You can't say you believe while staying where you are. Belief will always push you out of your comfort zone. Faith makes you take steps before you see the outcome. That's what makes it powerful. It doesn't wait for certainty. It moves in obedience. You don't need all the details. You just need to trust that God already has the path prepared. And sometimes path doesn't appear until your feet hit the ground. When Peter saw Jesus walking on water, he didn't experience the miracle by watching. He experienced it by walking. The others stayed in the boat discussing, doubting, analyzing. But Peter stepped out. He wasn't perfect. His faith wavered. He began to sink, but he still walked where others never did. Because movement brings revelation. You discover more of who God is when you step out into the unknown. You see his strength when your own strength runs out. You experience his power when your own plans fail. Many of us are praying, God, make a way, while he's saying, move, and I'll make the way as you go. The miracle often waits on your motion. You can't steer a parked car. You have to start moving for direction to make sense. It's the same in your life. God doesn't reveal everything at once because he's teaching you to trust step by step. If he showed you the full journey, you'd run from it. If you move with him, you'll find out that every step leads exactly where you need to be. Sometimes movement looks small. It might just be getting up in the morning and praying again when you feel nothing. It might be forgiving someone who hurt you or trying again after failure. God sees those steps and he multiplies them. The smallest act of faith can open the greatest flow of favor. Don't underestimate the power of one move, one decision to believe again, to apply again, to worship again, to hope again. Every step in faith shakes something in the unseen realm. Fear will always try to freeze you. It whispers that if you move, you'll fail. If you try, you'll fall. If you step out, you'll sink. But fear is the enemy of miracles. It wants you to stay where you are because movement exposes its lie. The moment you move, you realize it never had power. It just had your permission. Once you stop listening to fear and start following faith, the atmosphere around you begins to shift. You stop waiting for a sign and start becoming one. The miracle is never in the talking, it's in the doing. You can talk about faith for years and still stay in the same place. But the moment you act, heaven takes notice. God is attracted to boldness, not arrogance. Courageous trust. When he sees someone stepping out, he releases grace that wouldn't come any other way. That's why doors open when you knock, not when you stare. That's why blessings flow when you move, not when you wait for perfection. God uses movement to prove that your faith is real. There's a moment when you must decide that waiting on the perfect feeling is no longer an excuse. You have to move even while afraid. You have to walk even when unsure, because faith is not the absence of fear, it's obedience in spite of it. Some of the greatest victories happen in trembling step. The Israelites didn't cross the sea on dry land because they were fearless. They crossed because they trusted the one who told them to move. When they stepped, the sea split. The power was in the motion, not in the confidence. Sometimes you'll move and nothing will happen immediately. Don't let that discourage you. Just because you don't see instant results doesn't mean heaven isn't responding. The first step begins a chain reaction you can't see. The waters don't always part at once. Sometimes they start to shift beneath the surface. That's why you can't quit too soon. Keep walking, keep doing, keep believing. Miracles take time to mature. Every move you make in faith accelerates what's coming. And understand this, God doesn't bless movement just for movement's sake. He blesses obedient movement. You can run in circles out of anxiety, or you can take one step forward in faith. The difference is direction. When your movement aligns with His word, power follows. That's why before you move, you listen. You let His Spirit guide your steps. Then, once He speaks, you act without hesitation. That's where the supernatural happens, in the intersection of obedience and motion. Your movement might not change your situation immediately, but it will change you. You'll find that as you move, your strength grows, your confidence rises, your faith deepens. You stop waiting for the external miracle because you realize the internal one has already started. God begins to transform your heart before He transforms your circumstances. He uses movement to mature your trust. When you look back, you'll realize every major turning point in your life began with a simple decision to move. The job you took, the prayer you prayed, the risk you made, all of it began with one act of faith. That's how God works. He doesn't need a crowd, just one person willing to take a step. And when you do, you'll see that He was already there, waiting in the place your faith would take you. So don't sit still in fear. Doubt paralyzes your destiny. Get up, move, take the step, open the door, make the call, lift your hands, speak your faith. Because when you move, God moves. When you act, He answers. The miracle doesn't happen before you move. It happens because you moved. And when you step out in faith, you'll discover that what once looked impossible begins to unfold right beneath your feet. Delay is not defeat. Feels like a setback is often a setup for something greater than you imagined. When life slows down, when doors close, when people walk away, it's easy to assume that God has forgotten you. But the truth is, delay is one of His greatest tools of preparation. He hides you while He builds you. He holds back the blessing until the moment it can do the most good. The waiting you despise is often the protection you need. Never waste time. Every second of delay is part of His design. You see, divine timing is a mystery to the human heart. We measure time in days and years. God measures it in purpose. What seems late to you is right on schedule to Him. Sometimes He will let you sit in silence because He's ignoring your prayer, but because He's working on the pieces you can't see. You're praying for one thing, but He's orchestrating 10. You're looking at the surface, but He's adjusting everything beneath it. Every delay carries a reason. Maybe to build your strength, to protect your peace, or to redirect your path. God delays what could destroy you if it came too soon. Think about how many times in life we've begged for something we weren't ready for. Maybe you prayed for a relationship before you learned how to love yourself. Maybe you wanted promotion before you developed patience. Maybe you asked for more influence when your character was still being shaped. God's delay is not punishment, it's preparation. He loves you too much to give you what you're not ready to carry. His delay is not Him saying no. It's Him saying, grow. Because when the time is right, what's meant for you won't miss you. When God delays, He's aligning things behind the scenes. He's moving people into place, shifting situations, and adjusting the timing so that everything lines up perfectly. He's not just working on the blessing. He's working on you. It's not enough for the door to open. You must be ready to walk through it. He delays because He's perfecting what concerns you. When you understand that, you stop panicking in the waiting. You stop asking, when will it happen, and start trusting whenever it happens, it will be right. God doesn't rush destiny. He's never anxious, never in a hurry. We live in a generation that wants everything fast, quick results, instant answers, immediate satisfaction. But real growth takes time. A tree doesn't bear fruit the day it's planted. It has to grow deep roots first. Those roots are what hold it steady when the storms come. That's what God is doing in your season of delay. He's growing your roots. You can't see it, but something powerful is happening underground. The deeper the roots, the greater the fruit. When you try to rush what God is building, you weaken it. Imagine pulling a flower before it blooms or rushing a recipe before it's cooked. You ruin what could have been beautiful. That's why God sometimes keeps you waiting, not to frustrate you, but to finish what He's forming in you. He's shaping your heart, teaching you trust, and building resilience. The delay becomes a classroom where your faith learns patience and your spirit learns surrender. And sometimes the delay isn't even about you, it's about others. God may be preparing people who will play a role in your promise. He's arranging connections, opening doors in places you don't even know exist yet. You might be ready now, but someone else connected to your destiny isn't. So He delays, not because you're unworthy, but because the full picture isn't ready. What you call waiting is God's way of making sure every piece fits perfectly. When it finally comes together, you'll see why it had to take time. There's something holy about waiting. It strips away pride. It teaches you dependence. When you can't control the outcome, you learn to trust the one who does. The longer the delay, the deeper your reliance on Him becomes. You start to realize that faith isn't about getting what you want, it's about trusting Him even when you don't. The delay refines your faith, burns away impatience, and replaces it with confidence that God's timing is always best. You may not see it now, but every delay has purpose. The door that didn't open was protecting you from disappointment. The opportunity that slipped away was saving you for something better. Silence you're enduring is strengthening your spirit. God is not slow, He's strategic. When He finally moves, you'll look back and realize it wasn't a delay at all. It was divine precision. He waited until you were strong enough, wise enough, and humble enough to handle what He was about to give. When the appointed time comes, everything will happen quickly. Years of waiting can shift in moments of favor. That's how God works. He allows long seasons of preparation followed by sudden breakthroughs. Joseph waited years in prison, then was promoted overnight. Sarah waited decades for a child, then held her promise in her arms. David was anointed as a boy and crowned as a man. Every one of them faced delay, but the delay only made the fulfillment sweeter. That's what you must remember. Delay increases the value of the promise. When something costs you time, faith, and patience, it becomes sacred. You appreciate it more because you had to trust through tears to get there. You'll look back and realize that every not yet was leading you to a greater now. You'll thank God not just for what He gave, for when He gave it. Because if it had come sooner, it might have come smaller. So don't grow weary in the waiting. Don't let frustration convince you that God forgot. He hasn't forgotten. He's fine-tuning. He's writing your story with deliberate timing. Every delay is a sentence in that story. What He's building is too precious to rush. Trust that the delay is working for your good. Promise is still alive, even if it's taken longer than you thought. And when that day finally arrives, when the door opens, when the prayer is answered, the dream unfolds, you'll see it clearly. The delay wasn't denial, it was design. God wasn't holding you back, He was setting you up. The blessing didn't come late, it came right on time. And you'll say with tears of joy, now I understand why it took so long. Because the delay didn't destroy you, it developed you, prepared you to receive what was already yours in His perfect time.